Recorded live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the Black Science Fiction Society.com website. This is the December 2nd, 2016 edition. My name is William Hayashi. I'll be your host for tonight. And tonight's special guest is James Goodridge. He is an author. Some people just call it a writer, but he's an author and actually has a couple interesting things going on that we'll talk about through the night. And James is coming to us from New York. And welcome to the show, James. How are you?
Thank you. It's really a blessing to be on this show. You know, it's beautiful. It's all a part of this journey that I've been taking as a writer.
Very cool. Okay, well let me ask you this: you're in New York now. Is that where you grew up by chance?
Yeah, I'm up in the boogie down Bronx. If anybody from the Bronx is listening, I want to put a shout out to all of the ex people that used to live in Bronx River houses. That's where I'm at. Right now it's a little chilly outside, but it's all good.
Cool. And so, I mean, have you lived elsewhere, or have you mostly stayed there? Had the luck of being able to grow up and fly your trade from the same place?
Well, I'm a what you call a hard-boiled New Yorker. I lived in the Bronx pretty much most of my life. I spent a couple of years living in Brooklyn. Shout out to all the Brooklyn people too. And I'm straight up New York. I hate to say it, I'll probably end up dying here because I love New York.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. Now, from the outside, I'm in Chicago. I hear a lot about the gentrification of Brooklyn. Do I have that right? Is there a lot of that going on?
Yeah, it's a lot of gentrification all over the city. I mean, I lived in the Williamsburg section of Brooklyn, South Side, South 3rd, and that was the early 90s, and I moved out of there, let me see, I think it was 93. That's when the gentrification started because you had a lot of people, cultural people, artists that were being pushed out of the Lower East Side with gentrification. They were moving into Williamsburg, and I went back there a couple of months ago, and it's a whole different. It's not the same. That part of Brooklyn, Williamsburg, South Side, you have a lot of Latinos from the Ponce part of Puerto Rico, and just don't see that many Latino people there like you used to. And it's the same thing in Bushwick, Park Slope, up here in the Bronx, the Morrisania section of the Bronx. Manhattan is kind of ridiculous. It's, for lack of a better word, I don't want people to read too much in the word. Manhattan has become very vanilla, very plain, which is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And well, when you were growing up, and in the section that you were growing up in, what kind of childhood do you think you had? Do you think you had one that was kind of standard for the area? Did you have any special things going on? And how would you characterize, your earlier life?
Oh, well, I think I mentioned to you before, I like to use the word mystical. I would say I had a mystical childhood. We had all types of different activities back then. You can go outside and you have friends playing Skelsy, playing handball, basketball, baseball, football, all types of games from back then. Johnny on the Pony. I was
stickball.
Yes, stickball. If not that, not to show my age, if my mother gave me like maybe $1.50, I could go down the block to Westchester Avenue and come back with a armload of comic books, because comic books were like 12 and maybe 10, 15, 12 cents, and
yeah, they were 12 cents when I was growing up.
Yeah, exactly, So I feel really blessed that, I hate to say it, but I feel really blessed to grow up in the time that I grew up in, which was basically, the late 60s, the early 70s.
Sure. And so when, you're characterized as a writer, I mean, is that fair to call you a writer, or do you have other creative endeavors that Jarvis did not post up to me?
Yeah, I'm mainly a writer. Right now, at this point in time, I don't feel comfortable with the title of author, to tell you the truth. I just feel, again, with this journey, I'm a writer, okay?
Okay.
In fact, nothing for nothing, not to be facetious, I don't mind even taking the title of hack. You know what I'm saying? Listen,
now how do you figure that?
Because I guess number one, I'm humble, and number two, early this year, I had got an offer to do a couple of blogs for a horror website.
Okay.
I mean, I was churning them out, with no problem, And also, to tell you the truth, I like the life of a writer. I like that deadline. I like that right. Revising. Although editing could be, oh my God, you know how that is with editing. That could be murder, But yeah. So I'll take the title of hack a little bit, but mainly I consider myself a writer, and like I said, I don't feel comfortable with the author title at this moment.
Well, okay, so let's cast back to when you first started writing. I mean, was this something that happened in school? Was this something that happened later? Because for me, I started writing in 2001. I don't remember how old I was in 2001, but I mean, so that was fairly late in my life to all of a sudden kind of change gears and become a writer.
Right.
What happened with you when you got started?
I would say it was a couple of again, like I said, I call this like a journey, and I would say it was a couple of signposts along
Okay.
the journey. Number one, I also consider myself a reader that became a writer. Like you, I came to writing whole, the world at kind of late, Nothing for nothing. One of the people, setting aside some of his context of his work, setting that aside, some of the one of the writers that I like is Raymond Chandler.
Mhm.
He started late, writer, and so
Right.
like I said, getting back to the signposts of writing, I always liked how can I say? Okay, the Twilight Zone. Okay, those cats that wrote for the Twilight Zone, like Charles was it Belmont, Richard Matheson, Rod Serling.
Sure.
I was just fascinated how they could just churn stories out, week after week, even though, I was watching them as reruns. and whatnot. So that was one thing. And then I had a little bit of what is the word, an epiphany with it was an episode of Deep Space Nine. I think they did for Black History Month. Avery Brooks. It was something about, I can't remember the plot, but that went into another life or something like that. I guess as the emissary, as a science fiction writer.
Okay.
And the only problem was he couldn't let people know that he was a science fiction writer, because if the people that read his stories for a pulp magazine found out that he was black, you know, it would be an issue. In fact, that's what the episode was basically about, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That was another signpost. And then some short stories that I have read over the years.
Uh-huh.
I read. I'm like, you know, I can do that. You know, it's almost like the story with Octavia Butler, where she saw the movie, I think, She Devil from Mars, and she was like, I can do better than that. Yeah, that's how, from what I heard, how she got started. So that got me started, and really, I started off, I wanted to write, I guess, the Great American short story.
Sure.
You know, I wanted to write that Great American short story. You know, that was my thing, and I started to subscribe to Writer's Digest magazine, and I started to enter their writing contest.
Okay.
And it was a learning process, because if there's anybody out there that's afraid of submitting because they might be afraid of being rejected,
right,
just go ahead and send the damn thing out, okay? Because that experience that I had with Writer's Digest, it was a learning experience, because after I had sent a short story, which was kind of like a coming-of-age story of me in junior high school and puppy love and, you know, first girlfriend, blah, 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 woof, woof.
Yeah.
I went back and looked at it, and it was so horrible. It was so horrible. I said, you know what? I said probably when they got this story in the mail, they probably spent 15 minutes laughing at it. Probably put it in the circular file.
Yeah, but here's the whole thing about that. You know, when you're a writer,
mm-hmm.
and you decide you want to be you want to be published.
Right.
You know, there's a number of things that new writers often get wrong. Okay, and the first thing is new writers often consider criticism or rejection as a repudiation of self,
right?
Rather than just a rejection because either A, it really wasn't good enough because they're not skilled enough and they don't have enough practice, blah 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 blah, or because it didn't fit what the magazine or whatever the periodical was going to need at that time.
Exactly.
You know, maybe they've got a theme, maybe whatever, but yeah. Hang on. Being a new author is a tough row to hoe, because if you're not prepared psychologically, let's say you don't have any writing classes behind you. Let's say you didn't go to any writing seminars that explain to you the gestalt of submission, rejection, resubmission, honing your craft, the fundamentals of writing. I mean, there's so much that is. There's so much to being a good writer that, the idea of all of a sudden becoming successful on your first shot is probably not a reasonable expectation. And then on the other hand, then you have, very, very weak writers who will write a book on their BlackBerry, some fan fiction, and all of a sudden get struck by lightning because they wrote the perfect, housewife porn. And I know there's like 9 different things wrong with me using that term, but everybody knows exactly what I mean.
Yeah,
you take 50 Shades of Grey, that was lightning. That was lightning striking that author.
Yeah.
But then, you have somebody like Asimov, who started writing, very, very early, and only over time he got better and better and better until finally he had all of those great books,
Well,
So, go ahead.
No, you're absolutely right. And see, that's why that experience that I had with Writer's Digest, it didn't stop me from continuing, because
Right.
I didn't take it as, oh, you suck as a writer, I just took it as a learning process. That's all. And I just
and apparently you're not thin-skinned either.
No, because it is what it is. If you write something that's bad, it's just bad, and you just have, like you said, you have to hone your skills. You have to work at it. I get some people kill me because they come up to me, and when I say I'm a writer, they act like it's easy. Not.
No, it's not.
Not. And you have. It's. I mean, you really have to. I mean, what is the saying? Put your nose to the grindstone.
That's true. That's true.
I'm talking about where you raise up your head and your nose is bloody and you see the white meat in your nose and blood, blood splatter. It's not easy. It's not. And see, that's why I'm gonna be truthful. I have a low tolerance for certain people because sometimes I run up to some people and they're like, "Oh, you're right." I'm like, "Yes, I'm a writer." "Oh, well, I have this story that I want to do, but I have to have it. The moon has to be aligned in the right, and I have to have.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
I have to have incense burning, and I have to be tranquil. Let me tell you something. If I was in World War II, I would be a great war correspondent because I could actually sit and write amongst chaos sometimes. Okay, because my job. I'm a fire guard. Sometimes I'm a site supervisor fire guard, depending on where the company throws me.
Sure.
I have sat up and have wrote parts of short stories while there's craziness going on in the building that I work at. People yelling, people coming by me saying, "Oh, security, you suck, man." You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So, if you're gonna write, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. There are times when, yes, I like to put on some Miles Davis while I'm writing. I don't know if you're familiar with Charles Ives. Okay, Charles Ives he's great for if you're writing horror. But if you're gonna do it, by God, just do it and just deal with it. Just go ahead and do it. Don't sit and keep saying you're gonna do it. You're gonna do it. Just go ahead and do it.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: do you have, formal training, and by that I mean like writing classes, that sort of thing, that helped you kind of shape your skills and shape your, what talent that you have in writing, or are you completely self-taught?
Okay. Well, let's put it this way. I've always have done good in English literature. Okay, I've always liked to read the classics. Um, as far as like taking writing classes, no. Again, I'm a reader who became a writer. You know, I just
Okay.
and again, I also like the fact that again, growing up, you know, we had the half an hour TV show, and growing up watching these half an hour TV shows, whether it's a western, a comedy, sci-fi, which I love, I also found myself looking at who wrote that. You know, who wrote that story? You know, what? And then I wondered what was the process that they went through to write that story. I've also been fascinated with the whole world of writing. You know, I consider myself a Trekkie or a Trekker. I'm sorry, but I've also was fascinated by how I would hear how when they would shoot an episode of Star Trek, they would have different colors of the scripts. You know, one color would be like the script would be what's the old mimeograph, I think it was. We used to.
Right.
It would be on yellow paper, but if it had to be rewritten, it would be on like a light blue paper. And so, you know, that's the stuff that fascinated me, and also the fact that I consider myself a ferocious reader too.
Mhm. Mhm. So you know, at least you had curiosity about the process of writing, which probably lent itself well to you, you know, to your own writing. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, yeah, that's fair.
Very cool. Okay, so let's talk about when you got into writing. How old were you when you considered yourself more than a reader, but you were jumping into the writing, you know, milieu, you know?
Uh, I would say maybe 44, 2004.
Okay.
I had never wrote anything up to then. The only other thing I did was I remember as a child, I did like I had made a comic book. You know, I got some paper and pencil, and it was Karate Guy. You know,
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
only problem was I didn't write any dialogue. You know, it was just him and he meets some guys and gets beat
Get
up.
into a fight.
Yeah, you know, Karate Guy. But, you know,
Okay.
but no, it's yeah. I would say I took the plunge in 2004. Okay, and again, it was I wanted to write the great American short story. I wasn't even thinking about speculative fiction, although I should have. Okay, because you know I'm a big fan of, like I said, science fiction and horror and paranormal books. Um,
Sure.
you know, stuff like that, but I didn't put two and two together. I wanted to write the great American short story because, and that what ignited that was the fact that I had read a story by, well, first of all, I liked James Baldwin, okay? I like
Sure.
James Baldwin's writing. A lot of people don't know this writer too much, Yukiko Mishima. Um, Also, I read a story that lit a fire under me by John Updike called, I think, A Warm Place. It was a short story he wrote, basically
Mhm.
about a young man in high school that gets up the courage to ask a girl in his class for a date and she rejects him. But I found that little story so profound that I wanted to write the Great American Short Story. And right now, sitting in my writing box is the story, the Misfits Table. Is a coming of age story, part memoir about me, my first girlfriend. And to be honest, it's gonna sit in there until I feel the time is right to rewrite it.
Sure.
Yeah, because that one story is not, of course, it's not speculative fiction, but I would really strive for perfection for that. I want people to feel what I put on paper.
Mhm. Well, let's go back to you're jumping ahead, because when you sat down and you decided you wanted to write the Great American Short Story,
right?
How did you come up with the story? Where did the elements come from? Where was the inspiration? What do you think it was that was important enough for you to want to pursue getting a story like that out there? And how are you going to craft that story?
The inspiration for the story, you're saying?
The inspiration for the story, and how you figured you were going to be able to accomplish what is a fairly monumental task.
The inspiration for the story is, although I use a different name, the inspiration for the story was young lady Cecilia Brown, who was my first girlfriend in junior high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we know the inspiration.
Right.
And what kind of story were you going to craft around her?
The story that I was going to craft around her was how a person feels when they first fall in love.
Okay.
Whether it's puppy love, whether it's, a man and a woman and a woman, man and man, whatever floats your boat. But I wanted to bring out the essence of your first love at first sight. What turns your head around with this person? Why? How do you feel about it? Because with her, it was like I felt the world was all right for just that day when I first met her, and I wanted to, and I do want to, because like I said, I want to go back to it to convey that. I want to bring that feeling out of a person, that passion, be it okay, it is puppy love, because I mean really we only dated for like maybe half a year.
Right.
But
okay,
the essence of that, because I never forget that. See, we had a young guy named Michael Strickland. He was like the school matchmaker.
Yeah.
I found it strange that he brought her to my table, which I call the Misfits table, because the Misfits table in junior high school, it was sort of like a transitional table where people that were starting to become cool and hang out with the in crowd would hang at that table first, or people that fell out of favor with the in crowd would be at that table,
Sure.
And, I can remember this cold spring day, winter had just ended, and I look up, and it's this young lady standing in front of me, and she was dressed in what we call back then radical chic, because this is the early 70s,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And, it just blew me away, And like I said, I want to come back to it, but I want to come back to it after I've developed myself more as a writer. I don't want to touch it right now. Okay. I want to come back to it, and when I have enough seasoning as a writer, then I think I could get what I'm going. It's almost like, to me, one of the most perfect pieces of music ever recorded. I don't know if you're familiar with. Miles Davis came out with a work called, it's on the Sorcerer album, and it's called Prince of Darkness.
Yeah, I have the album.
Okay. To me, that opening song on the album is perfection in action. It's precise. It's perfection. It's not a flaw, you know. It's not a flaw in what Miles Davis did with that one song. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
So
okay. Yeah. So, there's an old joke, and it's been in movies and TV shows and everything, and a character is a writer or aspires to be a writer, and of course their ambition is to write the great American novel, or in your case the great American short story.
Right.
And so I guess my question to you is, take me through the process in your head of how you were going to accomplish that. And I'm not doing this like as a gotcha or anything else, but that's pretty damn ambitious. That's like, today I'm going to go win the Pulitzer Prize.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm going to write a book that's going to win the Pulitzer Prize. And so for you to kind of sit down and decide that you're going to write the great American short story, and then to have it about something that has had so many words written about it, which is, the falling in love thing, which I think is, for me, the best thing that I ever do and have ever done in my whole life, are and the coolest things are the times when I fell in love.
Right.
All right, I can't think of anything more, and I don't want to say fulfilling, but more majestic, in terms of how it affects your entire life than when you genuinely are falling in love. So and so I am far from being alone in that aspect. I think every writer who has addressed relationships has tried to convey, that overall gestalt of falling in love.
Right.
So for you to sit there and say that you were setting out to do that, that's a big ass thing, man. And that's cool, because it's like you didn't say, well, I'm going to write me a really cool Craigslist ad, or I'm going to write a really cool letter to the editor. You decided you were going to hit it on a short story of, I think, one of the most difficult things to do, because, the Temptations had a song called, in I think it was 71 on their Sky's the Limit album, can't nothing be love but love. Love can be anything.
Right.
Can't nothing be love but love. And you tackled that. You have to have word soup. You have to stir it right. You have to make sure the ingredients are great. You have to make sure it smells. That's a big thing, man.
Well,
it's a huge thing. And so for you to decide to do that, I think that's pretty cool that you decided, I'm not aiming low. I'm going right for the jugular, in terms of affecting other people and trying to write something that would have meaning for so many other people. So, all right, let me ask you this. Did you finish the story?
Well,
you know what I'm asking, though. You know what I'm asking, right? How did it go? How did it go when you when you actually started executing, when you started writing that story, what challenges did you face? Was it easy? Was it hard? What were you got to tell. You started out with that big ambitious goal.
Right.
You got to tell the audience where it took you.
Okay. Well, it's like this, and I want to thank you for bringing this out, because you're kind of challenging me to. I feel maybe I should go back to it, but in truth, the story is finished.
Okay.
The story is finished, but it's not good. It's not where I want it to be.
Okay.
That's why I have to put it on the shelf and come back to it. I don't know when I'm gonna come back to it, to tell you the truth, because again, at this moment, at this time in this journey I'm taking, I just don't feel that I'm ready to go back to that story.
I see what you're saying. Sure. No, I get it.
Yeah. I just don't feel that I'm ready to go back to. Maybe, God willing, I can go back to it when I feel I'm at that stage that I can convey those feelings, okay, that I want to put into the story, okay. But right now, at this point in time,
it's not the story you want it to be yet.
Right, exactly. And the funny thing about it is,
yeah,
okay, that happened in back in, like I said, it's part memoir. This happened back in 1973.
Mm-hmm.
When I sat down to write it, I'm like, oh well, okay, I lived this. I was there. I can deal with it. I know the details and all that. No, my brother. I just had a problem coming up with the scene, and mind you, it's clear as a bell in my mind back then. Okay, I even have the junior high school yearbook with her picture in it. But
no, I get that. I get that part. It is, because I'm going to tell you what's hard for me, and I think that I'm not that different from other writers. Right. And, some people say that women are better at doing this than men because women deal better with emotions, blah, 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 blah. Okay, by and large, from a cultural perspective, that might be true. But I will tell you where I think the most difficult part of trying to convey something as complex, and it is complex, as what to convey the idea, the act of, the romance of, the timing of falling in love, is that, first of all, you've got 250 things going on with a person at one time. You've got time, you've got space, you've got relationship, you've got every word that was spoken. You have every word that wasn't spoken. You have the nuance. You have to distill nuance from the vapor of existence. And to be able to turn those into words is what men and women have been trying to do forever. And so, yes, you may remember. I was thinking about my first girlfriend in high school a few days ago. And I don't even remember what reason I was thinking about it,
right,
other than maybe I should have been better at doing certain things. Well, never mind. So anyhow, but to try to convey, I think probably one of the most complex processes and emotion-laden experiences that people go through, that's a challenge. That's a true challenge. In my first book, I have two very different people who fall in love with each other. Okay, I have a white Atlanta missing persons police officer. Okay, so you got a police officer falling in love with an extremely intelligent black academic. Okay, and so having those two kinds of personalities and trying to write and convey the nuance of how two people like that find the commonality to be able to produce a relationship and then fall in love was hard, and it took me, over the span of, and it obviously the book wasn't just about them, but I got 500 pages in that book, and their relationship is the primary relationship in there, and having to convey that in a way that not only is accurate, but it's evocative. So when someone else reads it, they feel it. And I think that's the big challenge for everybody who tries to write about love and falling in love. And there's so many ways that it could happen. There are so many things that go into it. There's so many nuances to behavior, to circumstance, to the weather, to driving over to somebody's place, to going to lunch, to going to dinner, to having drinks, to even discounting sex, having to write about two people becoming physically engaged. There is such a myriad of experience that you have to put in there, and then when you write it, it has to be felt by the reader. So, go ahead. Yeah.
That's you hit the nail on the head with all of that. It's just it's so much that goes into trying to how can I say, make the reader sort of like, you want to like envelope, surround the reader with all of these things going on, and listen, God bless you, because you're further along in this journey than I am.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, no, listen, you're a teacher. I'm a student, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, thank you. You flatter me greatly.
Yeah, listen, it's see, that's another thing. I have made acquaintances in the flesh and online with so many beautiful, creative people. But getting back to that conveyance thing, that's why I just let the story sit there for a while, and hopefully one day I'll wake up and say, this is the day that I go back to. I just
trying to finish that, trying to revisit that short story, right?
Yeah, and now I have a question for you.
Sure.
Have you ever been in a situation where you've written, you wrote something, put it on a shelf, feeling that it's not right? How long, if so, how long did it take you to go back to it?
All right, I'm very, very fortunate, and let me tell you why. First of all, I wrote books before I wrote short stories, so that because I think it's harder to write a short story for me. My books are all 250,000 words, which is fairly big. That's a lot of words for a book.
Sure.
But in terms of when I get ready to write a book, it's pretty much written out in my subconscious. Okay, my subconscious knows where the story is going and what I want to do.
Right.
And so when I finally sit down in front of the keyboard, it comes out pretty easily. Now, in terms of have I written anything that I put away and have to return to, yeah, I have a couple manuscripts that I started that I wasn't ready really to continue. So to what you're saying, I think what you're asking me is, do I ever get into the process and then realize that I'm not ready to finish it, or I don't have what's needed to finish it,
Right.
and have I stopped? Yes, on two books. Now, obviously, I told you how I feel about the process of falling in love, and being able to write that so that it's evocative in the reader is something I've brushed against the edges of in my writing so far, my published writing. People falling in love, or discovering they have a commonality of experience that brings them together. Or, I wrote a trilogy of 3 books, and they're like almost 750,000 words, but in that trilogy there's a couple, that same couple, the cop and the administrator, and they obviously feel for each other, and that, from the feedback I've gotten from people, I did that well. And I even had to write a love scene for them, that was probably one of the most difficult things I had to do in the book, because if you write something like that, just culturally speaking, American women, black and white, have to feel a genuine emotional content in the relationship for something like that to work. Otherwise, they go, "Oh man, that's just that's just not, that never would have happened," or whatever. And for guys, it has to be visually stimulating enough, even in their mind's eye, that they don't get bored with it. So it's 2 different kinds of stimuli that you have to weave through that scene, which made it difficult for me to do it. So, one of the things that I didn't know a thing about women's erotica. So I read, some of that to get kind of the flavor of what seems to work. Okay, and I admit that it was an exercise rather than something that I just absorbed emotionally, probably because I'm a guy. But I am a half black, half Japanese lesbian living in a man's body, so I thought that maybe that would work it all in. But who knows? Yeah, I got issues. But seriously, I built a relationship based upon how they related to each other, what they said to each other, even how they teased each other and joked around with each other, because that's also as much the essence of building a relationship on paper as writing a sex scene. Your characters having sex, because sometimes people have sex and there's no real emotive content, or it's so the sex is so poorly done. I guess every year there's some group or society that does the awards of the worst sex scene written for the year. You know what I mean? In a book or a short story or whatever. Well, I didn't want that to happen to me. But admittedly, I had my experiences to draw upon. I had the writings of good women erotica writers. And also, I even asked, some of my women friends, because I didn't know. And so now I've got a better appreciation for the difficulties in writing. And, before anybody thinks about it, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I ran out of steam. You finish up.
Well, one thing I find I don't know. Why is it hard to write a short story? Because I'm the exact opposite. I'm like, because us short story writers were like sprinters, while the novel is, or the marathon runners. Why is it hard to write a short story? I figured that would.
Oh, I'll tell you why. Because I'm wordy. Okay, for me, writing a book is easy. Oh man, I could write a book. Like I can do a 250,000. No, let's say a 200,000, 220,000 word book in 6 months now. okay? Because when you have more words, you can build a deeper story because you have the space. It's like the difference between a puddle and a lake. You know what I mean? In a puddle, you can have maybe a little bit of insect growth and stuff like that in it, but in a lake, you have so much more stuff under the surface that you can really mix things up. And it took me a while to figure out how to write with brevity. To be able to have, the beginning, the middle, and the end. One of the things that I'm known for is having an ironic or unexpected ending. So in a short story, to set up that ironic ending, it doesn't. You have to be much more efficient, and I was not a very efficient writer. But you know what helped me do that? I did stand-up comedy, and when you do jokes, you can't tell an hour-and-a-half joke. Nobody's going to listen to an hour-and-a-half joke. So if you want to get your punchline and you want it to be effective, you have to have your build-up, the meat of the story, and then that quick ending. Yeah. And so then I started thinking about it differently, so my evolution as a writer obviously is nowhere near over, and I am getting better, which I'm very happy about, because you don't want to think that, you're writing the same kind of thing over and over and over again, and you're not honing your craft. It's like dude, you wrote the story, it wasn't what you wanted, and you put it away, and you said, I will do this later when I can do it better, right? Hello?
Yeah. Hello?
Yeah, your Great American Short Story. You decided, okay, I finished it, but it's not what I want, so I'm going to put it up until I can do a better job, right?
Yeah.
So that go ahead. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Like I said, when the time comes, I'll go back to it, but I don't feel at this time, that I'm seasoned enough or have the experience to touch it right now.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it, but that's a certain maturity as a writer that a lot of people don't get to. If we're going to be honest about this, there are a lot of people out there who will set out to write something, James, and they'll just write what they think they can write, and then they'll just assume that what they wrote, just because they finished it, was good. Okay? And you and I both know that that's not always the case. Okay, so you put that away. Tell me a little bit more about your evolution as a writer. What kinds of things have you tried? What kinds of things have you turned to? And let's start out with talking about what are your main influences now when you decide to sit down and kind of put something down on screen or however you do it. You mentioned that some of the TV shows that influenced you and some of the sci-fi and some of the horror. Give the audience an idea of kind of the position. Where do you write from? What's most important for you?
What's most important for me?
In terms of influences in your story.
Oh, well, as far as like influence, well, it's funny because I'm a big sci-fi fan.
Okay.
Science fiction. Grew up with as they say, the usual suspects. Star Trek, the old Irwin Allen shows, which
sure, Twilight Zone, Outer Limits,
all of that stuff. I want to give also a rest in peace shout out to Don Mitchell from Land of the Giants.
Oh yeah.
So I was brought up on those shows. Again, from a writer's standpoint, I loved Twilight Zone. Okay.
Sure.
Star Trek.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Because it was compact. It was the half an hour thing, although they went to an hour, I think, one season, the last season. But it was the half an hour. They gave you the story, and it had that twist at the end. Okay. But even though I love science fiction, strangely enough, I found out that I'm better at writing horror to a certain extent. And even with that, it's like my work is evolving from horror into like a diesel funk, occult detective type of genre. Okay.
Okay.
Because see, I have two projects that I've been working on for the last year. The first thing is the series of short stories called The Artwork. The Artwork is a series of short stories based on odd, strange things that happen in the art world. Because before I started writing, I was like involved in the art world for a while. You know, as a patron,
sure,
as an artist rep, I worked with different artists and curators. But after 10 years of that, that's another thing. After 10 years of that, working with different artists, you know, I said it's time for me to do me.
Okay.
So the series, the artwork, they're like I said, they're Twilight Zone type stories with a twist at the end. And most of the stories involve people of color. Then the second thing that I'm working on is a series of occult detective stories, and the two characters are Madison Cavendish, Seneca Sue. And it's funny how that started. That started as actually a story I wrote as, believe it or not, an answer to H.P. Lovecraft.
Okay.
That's another writer that I got into, but there's always the but with H.P. Lovecraft. You know what I'm saying? You know, people, hey, he's a wonderful writer, but, because I can remember back in the 80s reading Reanimator, and I'm like, yeah, this story is cool, and I'm reading it, and then I'm like, wait a minute, did he write what I just read he wrote? What I'm saying, because he was, to be polite, very xenophobic,
Right.
And so the first Madison Cavendish story I wrote is titled The Lower Manhattan Horror. And I tried to write it in, of course, Lovecraft's long-winded style.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it's not that good. It's not that good. That's another one that I have to rewrite. But as time went on, I developed the characters. Now it's a series of short stories. Madison Cavendish, also the working title of the Madison Cavendish stories, the working title right now is Passing of Time. Okay? And the reason why the title is called Passing of Time is because you have different levels of the story. Number one, him and Seneca Sue are immortals, okay? Because of an encounter with a nameless horror in Lower Manhattan, they've become immortals, and also Cavendish has also become a vampire, and Sue has become a werewolf, Okay. So the passing of time, the series of stories go from one decade to another.
Okay.
Like the original story is set in 1914. Then I have a story 1924, 1927, 1936, 46.
So it's like a series.
Yes, it's a series. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so that's part of the passing of time in the title. Also, the part of passing in time is the fact that Madison Cavendish is biracial, or as they used to say back in the turn of the 20th century, passing for white. That's an issue he has to deal with. Seneca Sue is part African American, part Native American. Okay, so that title, Passing of Time, can look at it two different ways. Also, what I try to do with these stories is, okay, you have major black historical characters. I'm sorry, black historical figures. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Marcus Garvey. Those are major black historical characters. I keep saying characters, historical figures.
Figures,
but,
yeah.
Yeah. But with these series of stories, I try to insert, when I can, what I call minor black historical figures that people these days have kind of forgotten, unless they go to like a black website like Black Then or something like that. Okay.
Sure.
Like, let me just go through a quick roll call. One story involves the biologist E.E. Just. Okay, he was a prominent black biologist from Howard University. Another story involves Rollo Ahmed. He was a black occultist. Another story involves Lieutenant Samuel Battle. He was the first black man to become a New York City police officer.
Okay.
Another story involves Hubert Julian. Okay, he was a bit of his nickname was the Black Eagle of Harlem because was like Bessie Coleman. He was one of the first, black people to get a pilot's license, and later on he became a gun runner in the Caribbean and got into a lot of skullduggery in the Caribbean. Another character is Philippa Schuyler, daughter of George Schuyler, who I believe some people say was one of the first science fiction from a black standpoint. Although I think yeah. So yeah. So Philippa Schuyler, his daughter, she was a black concert pianist. Okay, so what I do is I try to insert these people. Oh, I also Bumpy Johnson, the Harlem gangster, who was a close friend of Paul Robeson. So what I do is, with these stories, I try to insert under the radar black
a little bit of reality to help to help give your stories a little bit of depth.
Yeah.
Okay, I get that, and then and since you're writing from a black perspective and writing black themed or at least black charactered stories, you're obviously trying to even though it's speculative or even though it's fiction, you still want to be able to inject elements of black culture in order to bolster the environment, the plot, the what have you. Correct?
Yeah. Yeah, like case in point, excuse me, with the Philippa Schuyler story, that's set in 1954 at the height of the Red Scare. Okay.
Yeah.
And also, what I try to convey is, I also had a feeling that life is sometimes one big gray area. But what seems things are not strictly. Some issues are just not black and white. Okay, so the Philippa Schuyler story, which the actual name of the title is the Cloverdale Affair. George Schuyler has to go to Madison's Cavendish and ask for his help, even though George Schuyler, not many people know, he was like a really arch conservative, and he's like a cheerleader for the House of Un-American Activities during that time.
Right.
Basically, the story is about how he basically threw Madison Cavendish under the bus, so to speak, because Madison Cavendish is a dear friend of Paul Robeson. But now he has to come to Madison Cavendish for his help because somebody's trying to destroy his daughter's career. That story is more darker, I would say, in tone than the other stories. The other stories. See, sometimes with some that I write, I like to go. I guess I'm a little like you, except for I'm doing the short form, in that I like to go from like a light tone to a dark tone, so to speak. I don't know if that.
No, I get that, and essentially, at the bottom or the baseline of your intention, the baseline of your of what you're trying to accomplish is to be a good storyteller. Or if we go back to your ambition in writing the great American short story,
Right.
you at least have set a goal for yourself to try to become a master storyteller, correct?
Yeah.
All right, let me ask you this. Okay, you have mentioned that you've started on some projects and you felt that you couldn't really do them justice, and you've kind of put them to the side until later. And please don't take this as any criticism at all. This is me trying to understand you better. Okay, have you ever considered looking at some formal training in storytelling just so that you can see what other people say are the fundamentals? And let me ask you why, or let me tell you why I say that. I used to coach tennis. I played pro tennis. I used to coach tennis. And so, on these teams, these kids would come up to me and say, how do I get to hit the way you hit? How can I be as good as you? And I'm not saying that I'm great. I mean, I'm old now. I'm old as hell now. I'm like 189 in white people years. But I was very good years ago. And they always wanted to know how I hit the ball the way I did, how I hit the ball as well as I did. And we'd watch, other people at Wimbledon and stuff like that. And I said, okay, gather around, come in close. I don't want everybody to hear this, okay? Because this is the secret, the one and only secret to being the best tennis player you could be. And they go, well, okay, what is it? And I'd whisper, you have to hit 1,000,000 balls. And essentially I was telling them, you have to know your fundamentals. So I'm wondering if you would see any value to maybe having some formal training that might help you at least organize your writing style, or whatever it is that you think you don't have that you need to make these stories the way you want them to be. I mean, what do you think of that? And please, this is no criticism on my part. I'm just kind of looking at your perspective, because you've said, on more than one occasion, you had a great intention for a brilliant story, but you couldn't pull the trigger on it. You couldn't do it the justice you wanted to do to it. So what do you think it's going to take? Is it going to take, and would some more formal instruction help you out?
Oh, okay. Well, with me, I'm learning every day. Okay.
Right.
I read other writers. I look at their style. I pay attention to the writer's voice that they're, conveying in their writing. So, again, when I say it's a journey, it's a learning process. Every day I'm reading something by somebody. I'm reading books on how to improve your writing. I've even pulled out what is it? Oh God, I can't remember the name. Writing book that I had in high school. And really,
sure.
Yeah, that's what I do. Because sometimes you got to back up before you go forward. So it's a learning process. I also try to have other writers at my work when they can. Also, just because I've had a little bit of success with some of my writing, that don't mean nothing.
Right.
That just tells me that I have to do better. Actually, I mean, technically, this year has been a fairly successful year for me. I've had a short story in an anthology. I've had a essay, a nonfiction essay in a magazine. I've been doing a lot of blogs. Right now, I'm halfway through with the Madison Cavendish stories. I'm like halfway through. Let me just make the announcement now. I've signed the book contract.
Mm-hmm.
Fifth City Press. It's a small press run by Kevin Kosnovich, the teacher down at William and Mary College down in Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
I'm halfway finished with the series because I want to have like 12 short stories, Madison Cavendish short stories in this, short story collection. I'm like halfway finished, But even with this, and I've been writing blogs and all that stuff, for horroraddicts.net. Also, Jarvis, I was shocked to find out that Jarvis had reprinted my initial artwork story for this this winter edition of Black Science Fiction, Genesis magazine.
Right.
But that doesn't mean. I mean, I'm grateful for all of this, but that's just telling me that I have to still work at what I'm doing. It's still a learning process. Again, I tried to read other authors, other writers, to learn the process. I recently got out the library a very good book called The Literature Book, Big Ideals Simply Explained. And
okay.
It's a wonderful book because it gives you the different genre and writing styles and again it's all a learning process. It's all a learning process. if I can, hopefully, maybe I will back up and go. Not really back up, just go in another direction and maybe take a writing class.
Sure.
Because again, it's listen. I'm a humble person. Whatever constructive criticism or insight that I can get, it helps. It's a help.
It really does, and sometimes it's just a matter of joining a writers group, because if you have many different writers, together, there's a lot of different perspectives from people who are engaged in the same craft.
Exactly. There's which I wish they would find out whether they're still active or not. There's two writers groups right here in the Bronx. They have a Bronx fiction writers group. What is it?
Very cool.
Blind Beggars Press too.
And that just getting another set of eyes on your stuff can often help.
Yeah. Oh, and see, that's something I've done from day one. I want to give a big shout out to Celeste Rita Baker. Okay, Celeste has a story in the first Black Science Fiction Society anthology. She's been a big help. Okay, because actually we used to have a little writers group that used to meet every last Sunday down at her brownstone in Harlem. Was
sure.
Me, her, a couple of her writers friends. What is the young guy's name? Nilo Maxwell used to.
I know him well.
Yeah, Nilo used to be there with us and a couple other people. But
I
don't know. We kind of fell off with that. But yeah, Celeste, she's been a big help over the years. She's been a big help. There's a young lady, Ross. Oh God, I hope I get her name last. Out there, Ross Rashamani. She's part of a collective down in Philadelphia, Metro Polarity. She's the one that helped me get that essay into the magazine down in Philly.
Very cool.
Yeah, so it's I'm not one. Listen, I'm not one to think that I'm all of that. Success. Really. And I don't even. This has been a good year, but the bottom line is there's more work to be done.
Yeah. Oh, of course. I believe that the best writers consider themselves at all times a work in progress.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's look 5 years down the road. Usually I save this for the end, but it's kind of interesting looking at how your career is adding up. 5 years down the road, what's your goal in terms of being an artist?
5 years.
What would you like to see? Would you like to see, a novel published? Do you want to, think about where you are today and what your long-term plans are, and tell us, what you're shooting for maybe 5 years down the road.
5 years down the road, what I'm shooting for, because just the fact that I'm at where I'm at now, to me, the battle is halfway won. Even though I
Okay.
that I have to work harder. 5 years down the road, I would like to see more. Maybe 5 years down the road, maybe I want to see myself working on my third or fourth set of Madison Cavendish stories.
Okay.
I would like to see myself working on second set of artwork stories. I also would like to start on a novel. See, I also had this thing where I for the last 20 years, I've had these dreams, and gotten to the point where the dreams are basically about a city called Devon's Corners, right? I would 5 years down the road like to start on that as a novel, but that's gonna be a hell of a thing. It's gonna be a hell of a thing because it's almost like, are you familiar with the movie Cloud Atlas?
Yes.
It's something like that.
So it's a multi-generational saga.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that would probably consume me for the rest of my life or not. Maybe.
Well, I mean, if your characters are good and you develop a following, there's no reason why you can't, carry on, big, broad story arcs for your same characters. Because one of the things about people who write series is that what brings people to read the series, obviously, is they want to read a series to completion. But if the characters are interesting and they do interesting things and hold people's interest, and the characters are three-dimensional, people will tend to stick with you. I mean, when I think about my reading of all the Golden Age authors, Asimov's two series, the Robot series and the Foundation series, I wanted to see how, in the Foundation series, Harry Sheldon's psychohistory played out. And what the influences would be. And with Robert Heinlein, he's got so many different people from the Lazarus Long set and all of that. And so, yeah, I could see how you could craft something like that very, very easily as long as you do it well. And not that I doubt that you would do it well, but I mean, obviously that's the key to how other people get away with it and get these vast, very, very faithful followings. And so you're thinking in terms of turning your creative universe into more of an epic landscape, right?
Yeah, because the truth be known, going back to the Madison Cavendish stories, I've I've inserted a character, dimension of a character from the artwork series into the Madison Cavendish universe.
Sure.
That and also, again, who knows, maybe 5 years down the line, maybe I'll pick up the Misfits table,
Well, I mean, one of these days you're going to turn back to and publish the Great American Short Story, right?
Yeah. And nothing for nothing, we've all heard the saying, write what you know.
Right.
And I know a lot about, my thing is the paranormal and the occult, not to sound like an old newspaper reporter, but UFOs have been my beat for the last 30, 40 years. So maybe it's just writing what you know. But hopefully like I said earlier, maybe I can wake up one morning and say, this is the day that I redo the Misfits table. And like we say, pay it.
Yeah, now that I'm sitting here, with my feet up, thinking about what you've been talking about, it would. I could probably turn out, or at least I think I could probably turn out a good love story about a good relationship between people. None of the stereotypical, urban crap that. I guess that was uncharitable of me, and I apologize for it. But nothing stereotypical. What people expect, black authors to write about, and I'm doing the air quotes thing when I say romance,
Yeah.
Because we as black folks who write all these songs about love and relationships and this and that, and then you look at how we behave and you're going, well, how does all of that happen when none of this stuff is working?
Yeah.
But I like go ahead.
Yeah, which I don't mean to get on my soapbox right now, but if another thing, if what I write is if what I write can kind of get somebody to get more into reading and more into like thinking outside the box instead of the same old nonsense, that
right.
makes me happy too. Because William, I'm really pissed because Monday I'm getting ready to get off of work, and it's like I'm with these senior citizens, and it's like I hear 3 pops outside the building, and I
Okay.
go out in front of the building where I work at, and it's a young black man stretched out in the street. Somebody done ran up behind him and put 3 bullets in him. Like, really depressing,
Right.
It's, I don't know. It's just to be aggravating with that, and I just feel that would just stop the nonsense and look for think outside the box. Look towards other things. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's what a library is there for. Thank God for people like Jarvis. Working with the library and everything.
Sure.
So yeah, let me step down off of my soapbox.
No, it's okay. I mean, well, if we're going to be entirely honest, people most often write about things that they care deeply about. Okay, whether it's their creative universe, whether it's their characters, whether it's one or two of their characters that they fall in love with, but when you talk about things that are evocative of our passions as people, okay, as adults, to look at what our subject matter is. Okay, let me use myself as an example because I don't want to speak for anybody else. I write about social justice. All right, I write about black-white issues so far, for the most part.
Right.
A couple of the short stories I've written have been in other people's universes, and even then, there's still that element.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that really trips my trigger is the amount of BS that non-whites in this country have had to go through to live here. All right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm half black and half Japanese. My dad spent, a good amount of time in a concentration camp in Utah during World War II because white folks were scared that Japanese folks on the West Coast were going to let the Japanese bomb Hollywood or Las Vegas or whatever. So I ain't happy about that. Plus, I had relatives in Nagasaki. Okay? So, I got issues on that side. And then my black side of my family comes from Oklahoma. and they had problems down there. And then living in Chicago, living on the South Side, now I admit I grew up in an intellectual mecca. I grew up near the University of Chicago in Hyde Park, the same neighborhood, well, Hyde Park, Kenwood, same neighborhood Barack Obama's house is in. All right, and this is a neighborhood that's populated with non-whites. Well, no, let's call it what it is. Black folks who don't exist in American culture. All right, I've bitched about the fact that Cosby had so much pushback in his last show when he had a black lawyer marry a black doctor, and they had teenage kids with white problems. And everybody said, "Oh, there's no black families like that in America," which was patently BS, because I grew up with families like that. My friends were, middle class, upper middle class, black folks. So when I started writing, I wrote the book, the first book that I wrote. First of all, I didn't know a damn thing about writing books, but I wrote a book. I wrote a manuscript. And it was a protest thing for two reasons. One was I wanted to have African Americans in it that I grew up with. African Americans who don't exist in our culture, where you have two-parent households, where one parent works, where the kids go to school and have never spent a second in jail. And to be quite honest with everybody, I have no idea how I avoided going to jail, all the things I did. But seriously, but people like me don't exist. People like middle-class black folks, upper-middle-class black folks don't exist. You got your Michael Jordans. You got your Oprah Winfrey. You got your Shaq. You got your Kobe. You got your rappers. You got your Rihanna. You got all of these people, but no middle-class black folks exist in American, black American nomenclature. So my first book was a protest against that, because the people in this book who did what they did in this book were middle-class and upper-middle-class black folks. So then the whole series came out of that, the whole trilogy, and then in the second book you get to meet these people. These are people I grew up with. I talk to other black folks that I know, my friends, and they go, "Man, I know exactly who this is like," And so I wanted to write about what I knew, but I wanted to write about something that America tries to ignore. Okay? Go ahead.
No, exactly. I hear what you're saying, because it's like America just tries to look at us through one lens, so to speak. You know what I'm saying?
Well, they treat us as a monolith. We're all one kind of thing, except the exceptions like Jordan and Oprah and whoever else. Kevin Hart. So yeah.
That's like America, like with my niece. Okay, my niece is a lawyer for the Department of Education down in D.C. She's married to a doctor. You know what I'm saying? But like you said, America ignores them. It's what is the word? The saying no, I don't even want to. But
okay, I get you.
Yeah, because I was getting ready to say the squeakiest wheel gets the oil. Yeah, so white America tends to focus on the squeakiest wheel in the black community.
Okay, I could sort of understand that. There was a small part of Michael Moore's film, I think it was Fahrenheit 9/11, where he talked about the systematic demonization of African Americans in American culture. Fox News, and how they portray us as thugs and this and that and this and that, and it's systematic. In terms of American culture, and American culture is designed. Go ahead.
Here in New York, the New York Post has been doing that for decades. The New York Post has been demonizing black people in New York City for decades.
So you have that going on, and then you have somebody like me, and I admit, I'm middle class or upper middle class or whatever you want to call it. I'm certainly hyper educated. I'm very aware, and so, but I still have the same kind of resentments that any other person of color, any other black man or Japanese man or Japanegro man or whatever it would happen to be. But the fact of the matter is that, and this goes back to you talking about, well, what the kind of motivation for the stories that you write and the longevity and stuff like that. I wanted to write about things that mattered to me, that made a difference to me. Writing is not casual. First of all, it can't be casual. Of course, depending upon how much time and effort you put in it. Uh-huh. So, I tend to see when I look at what people write about, I tend to believe that they wrote what they wrote because it's something that is important to them. For whatever reason. I don't pick and choose the reasons or try to dissect it. Sometimes I'm lucky enough to get them on the air, and then they'll tell me what their reasons are. And so looking at someone's motivation, I think, is just as important as looking at what they write, because then you get to understand more about what's going on in their head and what makes them tick. And so for you, if you were going to sit back and explain to people why what you write is important to you, what do you think you would tell them about the Cavendish series?
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it about that series that is most important for you as a writer?
What is most important? Well, again, I guess it's different levels. Like I said, one is
sure.
I feel that have certain black historical figures who are under the radar who didn't get their due, so to speak.
Okay.
Like
me and my neighborhood kids.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned the name E.E. Just to somebody, they don't know who he is.
Right.
That he was a black biologist, So
sure.
That's on one level, what it means to me. On another level, again, the 56 years that I have been on this planet, I've come to see that, again, nothing is cut and dried black and white. You have large gray areas,
right,
so to speak, in life. So Madison Cavendish himself, he's kind of like had this immortality and vampirism, what have you, thrusted upon him. So he's kind of like maneuvering through life and trying to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's again, life to me is one big gray area. Nothing's cut and dry. Also, I just want, with the stories, I just want it to be a case where a person comes home from work or they're at work, they can pull the book out of their bag and just maybe just enjoy themselves for a couple of minutes reading the story. That's another thing. that I want people to get out of this story.
Yeah, okay. Let's see. We got about 20 minutes to go. Is there anything that that you've been thinking about during the show that you wanted to bring up? If not, I do have a question for you. But let me ask you this: is there anything that we haven't covered yet that you would want to?
No, I think this is about it. I just feel truly blessed to be on this journey.
Don't worry about it. I'm not that important. People. No, but seriously though, I have a question for you. Okay, so you've been writing, at least a decent amount of time. All right, and if you're if you're going to be in front of people who weren't writers, but who might want to, or who are thinking about getting, starting to put pen to paper, so to speak, what's the best lesson that you've learned so far in getting your writing out there?
The best lesson I've learned so far again about writing out there is you have to have a platform. Okay, that's one thing. You have to have a platform. That's why I have my writing page, Who Gives You the Right, on Facebook, where people who are thinking about getting into writing, people that are established writers, people that are patrons of writers, readers, they can come, they can enjoy a little bit of stuff that I put on there about, comics, TV shows.
Okay, and wait, before you go any further, for people who are going to look for it, on Facebook, do a search for Who Gives You the Right, and that's WRITE. That's that's the page that you put together. Okay, go ahead, continue.
Yeah, so the best advice I could give for people is, number one, got to have a platform. Okay, some other writers said a couple of months ago, I think on his YouTube page or whatever, that the days of J.D. Salinger are gone, up in the cabin and just write. So you have to have a writer's page. That's number one. Number two, you have to network. Okay, network with other writers. I mean, I've met in person and online beautiful people like Val John Jeffers, Samiko Saulson out on the West Coast, Lynn Lucas, Celeste Rita Baker, who I mentioned before. So you gotta get that writing. You gotta form almost like a writing family. That's number two. Number three, edit, revise, edit, revise, edit, revise.
Right,
Okay?
right.
Because when I first started, I was like Mr. Typo Man,
Sure.
So you got to edit, revise, edit, revise, edit, revise. And finally, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. You got to go at the way I say, you have to go at it almost like a B-17 pilot during World War II, because they had a high casualty rate. You got to look at it like you're not going to live forever. Go out there, do it right. And I guess number 5 I'm on. To use Ray Bradbury's, to quote him, just right. Right.
I have an analogy that actually fits in with your B-17 thing. Remember, B-17s were lost in the European theater at an embarrassingly high, a hellaciously high rate.
They were.
Until the Tuskegee Airmen started escorting them.
Yeah.
And then they only lost 3 through the end of the war. So the analogy is get yourself a team. And that means you want to have readers who read your stuff, and you want to have someone else other than yourself do your final edits.
Exactly.
Because your brain is going to fool you into thinking, oh, no, it's perfect. No, William, go ahead, put it out there, man. That was great. That was some of the best stuff you've ever written. And, of course, my brain is telling me, oh, no. You don't need to change a thing. It looks beautiful. And somebody else looks at it and goes, well, do you want me to clean up these 27 errors, or are you going to let them go through?
That's right.
So try to get yourself a good team. You want to have good readers. You want to have editors. You want to have people who will support you by giving you an honest appraisal of what it is that you've written. Because there are a lot of writers who I have met over the past decade, the past 15 years, who, when they ask you for a critique, they're only looking for a cheerleader. They're not looking for an honest assessment. So
you really don't need a yes person. You have to have somebody that's honest in what.
You there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, and then over the last few years, what's been the worst thing that you've run into in plying your art?
Worst thing I run to and find my art.
Yes.
There was there's a online magazine that I kind of thought that they were like professional, but they were very slipshod.
Right.
I had submitted something to them, like, okay, it took them a while to get back to me after some changes, and I did them. Then it's like they went offline, and at least the person that ran the magazine was enough to that him and the wife, she also had a hand in it. They would whatnot from the holidays.
Okay.
They were just like inconsistent, so inconsistent, and then I would get else from them which I couldn't understand talking about, and I finally sent in a polished story to them. I don't know what happened to them. Then then I had one person that I got them as a neutral, unbiased. I wanted a good criticism, of the story.
Right, a good critique. Sure.
Good critique, and they sent me a message back saying that I should turn the story comedy that you can play like a video game.
Okay.
It's like,
Yeah. Okay.
So it is what it is. But again, I like to tell people in for a penny, in for a pound.
Right.
Okay. So this is where I've laid my hat. This is what I'm going to do. Hell or high water. Criticism or no criticism. Just again, it's just been a beautiful journey.
Sure.
I've met some really fabulous, really cool people. And if I had to do it over again, I would do it exactly what I'm doing now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. All right, and let me ask you, do you get out and do very many conventions or anything in your local area there?
No, see, that's the problem with the job that I do. The job that I do again is a fire guard and quote unquote sometimes a supervisor. You have really odd hours.
Okay.
But I've made a pact with myself that starting next year, I'm going to step up my game areas, which means I'm going to, conventions. I'm going to network with more people. I'm going to reach out, reestablish connections with people that I know. I want to meet some of the people that I know, some of the writers that I know that I've made acquaintances with online. I want to meet some of them in person. I want to get like a nice knot of people that we can get together at least one day, twice out of the month, and just laugh,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I just want to step things up in all areas,
Sure.
What I do, it's become a passion. I know it's become a passion because none for nothing, ain't no shame in my game. I was crying over a character in my sleep the other day.
Really?
Yeah, because sometimes the plots or for stories come in my sleep. Just something that happened. Oh, what it was I was thinking about why is it Madison, Seneca Sue, why they haven't had any children? And someone told me that. Why would you, if you're immortal, why would you want to have a child that all you're going to do is watch that child grow old, die before you?
Right. Okay.
So I kind of came up with this plot where every once a year they go out and they have a nice quiet dinner and talk about the child that they could have had,
Mhm. Mhm.
They kind of, also like to during that time find a nice quiet place to dance to some ragtime, since that's the time they
Yeah.
Yeah. So all of that came up in me, and I actually started to shed a tear because here are two people that, because of what happened to them, they can't bear children, and it was really
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's when you know that that's one of the telltale signs that'll tell you that you're there as a writer, when you really start to feel what your characters are feeling.
Right. Right. And it also speaks to the emotional investment that you have in terms of putting your characters and their universe together,
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, when I'm in the middle of writing, a manuscript or whatever, there will be times when I will actually dream about whatever's going on in the book or what should go on, or something about it, and that's when I know that my subconscious is truly invested in the story I'm trying to tell.
Oh man, yeah, tell me about it. It's kind of hairy.
Well, I think if you're a fairly decent writer, you probably you have that level of investment in what you're working on. And for me, since my books are so damn long, I'll spend a tidy amount of months, just inundated with everything that is the story. Both trying to write it and then trying to tighten it up so that it's as good as it can possibly be for the level of talent I am at that time. So now I get that, and like you said, once you're into it like that, it's going to stick with you, and it's probably going to. I mean, the fact that you woke up, or shed a tear for your character, that's not surprising. I had a tough time. Oh, two things. One was I had to kill a character off.
Wow.
And I didn't like doing that. This was a favorite character, but somebody had to go, and it turned out to be him.
Wow.
And the other, and the other thing was, in the last installment for my trilogy, I was writing, and then I realized that what was going on in the story was not going to bring me to the ending that I wanted. I always start out all of my books knowing exactly how they end, and then I craft a story that gets to that ending. Well, this time I realized that there was nothing I could do with what I had in order to end the story the way I wanted to end it. And then I had to throw away four chapters, 20,000 words. And of all the things that I've ever done as a writer, that was the hardest thing for me to do, which was to take that many words and discard them. And I tried, man. I thought long and hard about how I could save these. Can I move it around? Can I do this? Can I do that? And there was absolutely no way I could save it. And I had to, delete these 4 chapters. And I cheated. I didn't delete them. I just moved them someplace else where they were out of sight. But
you
I
basically
think
wrote yourself into a corner. You're saying?
I was writing. Everything was going left when it should have been going right, like that. It just was not aimed. It was not going to take me to the ending that I wanted. And boy, that hurt. That hurt worse than anything else that I've ever had. That hurt worse than the 1-star review I got for Discovery on Amazon. But then, but it made the book better rather than having to make up an ending that would fit where I had put for those 4 chapters. I took the 4 chapters out and I restarted and I went toward exactly where I had to go. And so, I think that was a useful lesson to me, because instead of trying to keep those 20,000 words and either make the ending try to come that way or whatever, I just said, nope, it's not going to work. Time to go. Hey, man, we're out of time.
Oh, wow.
Sorry to say. Didn't seem like it was that long, did it?
No.
But, James, I want to thank you for being on tonight.
Well, thank you.
I had a lot of fun, man. And I think that, the people who are going to hear this as a podcast and check you out, this will be both on TalkShoe and it will be up on YouTube. So you'll be able to link to it and post to your Facebook pages probably within 2 days. Okay.
Okay. Well, again, I feel really blessed to be on this and to be talking to you. It's been a learning experience. Again, that's what.
Really?
yes, that's part of what this journey is for me. Again, in for a penny, in for a pound. I'm constantly trying to look at different ways to go about the craft.
Mhm. Mhm.
This has been a learning experience, and I'm really grateful for it, William.
I hope I didn't talk too much. If I did, I apologize.
No. Listen, listen. Like I said, it's been a learning experience. It's been like sitting in the classroom. Gosh, I should have took notes down too. Well,
stop it. Well, you can always re-listen to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, since Jarvis isn't here and he's not going to close out the show, let me do what he normally does. I want to thank you for being here. James, thanks a lot. For those of you who want to check him out, you can look him up on Facebook and then look for the group, Who Gives You the Right, WRITE.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, for those who may have tuned in late or tuned in the middle, this is James Goodridge, our special guest for tonight. Look to see him everywhere, and eventually he's going to put out that great American short story. So I'm going to be waiting on that, man, okay?
All right, thank you.
It's been great. Hang on after the show, and we'll have a quick chat. I want to thank all of the 1 people or 2 people who are in the chat room. Thank you very much. We've got Aaron Michael. She's been here. They have been here. There we go. Non-sexual, non-gender. They have been here the whole time. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for your comments. I want to thank everybody who supports this show. I want to thank everybody who supports the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. All of your support is appreciated. We have a lot of things that we're trying to do. We are trying to, well, actually, we've been around for quite some time as the a bastion of Black creativity in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. So, okay, yeah, I know it's a she. I didn't know. You got Aaron Michael right there. Anyway, thank everybody for the support of the show, and hang on, James, and we'll see if Aaron has any last-minute questions for us. So on behalf of everybody who helps put this show together and the people who help BlackScienceFictionSociety.com, I want to wish everybody a good weekend, and we'll see you again next Friday.